Let's carry on the theme from last week's video of water droplets, and let's do some water droplets on glass to create some refraction photography. Welcome back to week 2 of my winter studio projects. Projects that you can do during winter to keep your mind active until the insects come out in the spring. In this video, we're going to be taking what we learned last week with water droplets, and we're going to apply that to a different technique, which is placing water droplets onto a glass pane and shooting through them, creating a refraction effect in the water droplets. Essentially what happens when you put the water droplets onto your glass pane, it creates a small lens that refracts whatever is behind it, whether that be a texture or an image on an iPad. You are going to need a few things for this project, but let's get started. The first thing you're going to need, and the most obvious, is a glass pane. There are several places you can get these glass panes from, and I'll start from budget friendly up to what I prefer to use. One of the easiest ones to use is to go into a shop and get a photo frame, A4 or A3. A3 will give you more surface space to work with underneath, getting lights and textures in. And the easiest way to get started is to undo your frame, exactly the same as you would do putting a photo into it. We take out the background and the paper that's in there. We can then do up the hinges or the mechanism that holds the picture in place, and we have a very simple and quick way of having a glass pane that we can use to put water droplets onto. Nothing wrong with that at all. I don't like it though. Okay, one, it's a bit shaky, noisy. That's mostly when I'm doing YouTube. I don't like the crackles of that. Plus it can take up a lot of room. So the other alternative you can do is you can take out the glass altogether. Now, get an adult to do these next parts for you. I'm going to be stuck because the wife's not here to do it for me, so you're going to have to put up with my idiocy for the rest of the video. But essentially, what you got is a glass pane. The edges can be sharp. They're not sharp that they're going to cut your hands off or anything like that. But what I like to do is put gaffer tape on the edges. However, this, I don't know if you can hear this. It's very thin. It can break very easily, so be very careful. So for this particular option, I would recommend you keep it in the frame. But if you want really good glass that creates really good results and it's very firm, what you want to look at is aquarium glass. So this is a sheet of aquarium glass, and if I bring up the other one, you can see there the thickness and thickness difference. Aquarium glass needs to be thick because it's holding back water. That makes it really good quality for this type of work. Now listen to this. You hear how thick that is? I've had this single piece now for years. It's done me very good. It came out of a little aquarium that you can get from most aquarium shops, pet shops, anything like that. You break the seal using a knife and you just pull it apart. And again, please get an adult to do it. I'm not responsible if you cut yourself doing this project and die from blood loss. But once you've done that, we need to make the edges just a little bit safe. And as I alluded to before, I like to use gaffer tape. So we're going to take some gaffer tape and a pair of scissors, and I'm going to unroll some gaffer tape. But essentially, if you're looking at the overhead, we undo the gaffer tape and we place our glass pane onto the gaffer tape like that, and take a pair of scissors. We're going to cut in like that on the edge, and we do both sides. Okay, and then what we can do is we can fold that up and over. Go. This side here, we fold that up. Okay, and then if you want to be double safe, we can do it again on that side there. I'll bring it round this way. Again, we're going to do another cut just here. Now I can fold that over. Essentially what we got there is a glass pane with masking tape on the edges, and that has made it safe to hold. We're not going to cut ourselves, and we need to do that on all 4 sides of our glass pane. So there we go, we now have the edges of our glass pane covered in masking tape. That gives us a firm grip to hold on to, it's safe to hold, and we can continue with what we need to do. And another thing why I prefer the glass pane like this is because it makes it easier to clean, because you haven't got the frame in the way, and that's exactly what we're going to do next. So this one has been outside accumulating to the weather in case it snows, so it's a little bit dirty, so I'm going to give it a good clean. It's just normal polish, will do the job. It's almost run out, I need a new one. This next part is I need to make sure it's completely dry, because we're going to test our water droplets, and we're doing this before we set up the camera so it's easier to sort out. So I'm going to take the same spray we used in the last video, which is a normal hair salon spray for your hair. I'm going to spray it onto the surface and see how it beads up. And that's not beading up that badly. See there? It's not that bad. But if you've just brought your glass pane, or it's very dirty, you might find that the water droplets lay flat. And this is because of what's called cohesion. Now, I hope I got that right. But essentially, it makes the water bead up into a bead. Now, what's happening is the surface of this glass plane isn't good enough to create a good cohesion. And what we want with that is a round water droplet. The rounder the water droplet, the better your image is going to be. So to fix that, what you want to do is get yourself some Rain-X. There's a link in the description for Rain-X. Go and get some of that. And this is typically what we use on a windscreen on a car to help bead up the water when it's raining so we can see better. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to place some of this onto a cloth. And then we're going to rub it onto our glass pane. And we're going to rub in a circular motion until it has completely dried out. Okay, once we've done that, I'm going to give it a wipe over with some normal kitchen toweling, just to get rid of the smearing, because it can smear a little bit. Right, now, we shall put our water droplets on there, and you'll see there just how nicely they've beaded up. You see that? They're looking nice. So what's going to happen here is our image that's underneath our glass plane, so we're going to be lifted up, is going to refract through the water droplets. So essentially the water droplets will be acting like a lens on your camera. So I'm going to wipe off these experimental test drops, and we're going to set the camera up now, and we're going to get on with some photography. But before we dive into the next part, I just want to say a massive thank you to my Patreon supporters. Your generosity makes making these type of videos possible, and I truly appreciate each and every one of you. If you'd like to join the community and get access to exclusive content, behind the scenes updates and more, check out my Patreon. The link is in the description below. Now let's set up the camera and get on with this project. Take our glass plane and we want to elevate it up above our desk. To do that, we use some very inexpensive Coke cans. So we want 4 of these. And if you notice, I've broken off the tabs so that it's nice and flat. There we go. All we need to know now is put our camera in place and put something in the background and start photographing our result. To do that, what you want is a tripod where you can invert the center column. And most tripods can do that these days. Even the budget ones off Amazon can do it. So invert your tripod. I'm going to set the camera up now, and I'll come back to you once I've done that. What we want now is a texture underneath. Now, for this part of demonstration, I'm just going to use my background textures. Be more creative. Download some sort of texture or an image that is funny, interesting, something like that. Now, the only reason I'm doing this now is just to show you this particular part. We're going to place that underneath our glass pane, and you're going to need something to light it. So what we're going to do there is just use a normal LED light panel. And then we want to squirt some water droplets onto our glass pane. Look at my focus. There we go. Look at those nice water droplets just there. I'm going to take a picture of that. There we go. Now, we're not getting anything interesting there because my texture, it sucks, basically. That's what I'm saying. If you do the printed method, which is what I'm showing you now, print out some interesting textures. But that's not the way I like to do things. What I like to do is I like to use my phone or an iPad. So let me remove the texture. So again, that's your printed method. We're going to be using the digital method. For that, we don't need any LED lights. We just use our iPad. And we have to have some preparation ahead of us before we can continue. One of the first things we need to do is we need to come into our iPad, into the settings. We want display and brightness, and then we want to turn off the auto lock. I learnt this the hard way. It was actually underneath the glass pane before I realised. So we want to do that, and then we want to download some interesting images. And one of the first ones I downloaded was this image from NASA, which is of the Earth. I'm going to tap it once to get it into full screen and place it underneath. And then the key to making this work is you need to focus on the refraction that's happening inside the water droplet. So let's take a look there. There we go. Let's just take a picture of that. And what it is you can't tell what it is. And the reason for that is it's too big. Let's take our iPad out. And what I want to do is you take the image and you take it into Photoshop and you make the image smaller by expanding the border. It's the same image, but I've used generative expand to expand the borders. Now you might be thinking to yourself, let's just use an iPhone. The iPhone doesn't work either because you can see the edges of the iPhone in the water droplets. So that doesn't work either. So this is where we struggle to get it into the middle of the image. My camera's at an angle. The iPad's an angle, so if I move it left, it don't move left on the screen, okay? So what I need to do is just move this over slightly. And this is where you're finessing the image just a little bit. And what I'm doing is I'm looking at the background because I want that to be filled. And you're looking at the water droplets in the middle of your frame. Let's go about there. Right, now before we take this picture, I'm going to activate or turn on, sound like data. I need to turn on my high-res mode. And again, we're on a tripod, so we use the tripod option. That's going to give me an 80 megapixel image. So what I can do then is I can punch in a little bit in post to remove the vignetting and the awkwardness that's on the edges. I don't particularly like, and again, it's down to your preference. And again, we are on a 2-second timer. When it comes to the exposure, I tend to ignore the exposure meter and I go with whatever looks interesting in my viewfinder. In this case, the EVF. Again, when it comes to photography, the exposure meter is just a recommendation. It's just a recommendation based on 18% grey in the overall scene. If you want to be really creative, just use your eyes and look at the scene and just go with it from there. So what I've just done is I've just turned off the macro, the super macro mode, because we're not that close. And I'm going to drop my f-stop to, we don't want 3.5 because on this lens it's a little bit soft. I'm going to go 4 and compensate with my shutter speed. Get +7 on the exposure meter. And I'm just going to move planet so it's about in the middle. We're again going to punch in. And you can see the water drop I'm aiming for. Right in the middle. And then we're going to hope to God we can hit critical focus without using our focusing rail. Right, that'll do for me. Let's take a picture of that, and there we go. So there's a few things you can do now, is you can experiment with the different images. So what I'm going to do is bring up some of my images here, and this one is of my damselfly. And again, if you've got the A3 glass pane, it makes it a bit easier to do this type of work. I can't fit it on the desk and present to you, so unfortunately I'm kind of stuck working with this iPad. But essentially, what I want to do is try and figure out which way does this need to be for it to be upright. I'm going to edit, rotate the image. No, I don't want auto, thank you. Rotate the image. And again, I'll just use generative expand to expand the background here. Okay, I'm going to zoom in on my camera. Now, this one needs to be at a bit of an angle to get it right. So what I did, I'll just reposition the camera for it to work a little bit better. But you notice how our subject is focused in the small drops and not the big drops. I'm going to take a picture anyway. And then I'm going to see what happens if we focus in the big drops. So this is where you're experimenting with your drop size. What type of drops do you want? See there? So I'm going to spray on some more drops. And I want to emphasize, and I keep saying it, experiment. Don't follow this video word for word. Experiment. So now we've got some bigger drops in there, look. And we're going to take another picture. And while you're experimenting, what I want you to try doing now as well is increasing or decreasing the distance from the water droplets to your background. Now you can do that by lifting up your glass pane. So for instance, we could do that. See there? Or lowering it down. For me to increase it, I'd have to have 4 cans. I don't think I've got 4 cans handy. Anyway, let's move on to the next image. What we've got here is Bungie, and again, I need to edit it. Or could we just possibly get rid of 1 can? We're pushing it now, I'm telling you. And just turn him around. Okay, let me do the focusing so we can see him. I need to get rid of that little black area. And how do we do that? It's not that way. But we are pushing the limits of what we can do with this glass pane here. Okay, let's punch in again. Check the focusing. Always check the focusing. Now you see there he's not quite in the center. Punch back out. And again, we take a picture. And again, we are on a 2-second timer. Yeah, that's interesting. What I am going to do is I'm going to lift it up a little bit. I'm going to do what I preach. I'm going to experiment. So I'm going to use 3 Coke cans. We're pushing it a little bit. We can use 3 Coke cans. In fact, I'm going to redo the water droplets as well. And you notice when I dry up the water droplets, I'm not rubbing the glass pane. I'm dabbing it. I'm going to go for bigger water droplets. That's the one, Grace, Stu. The way we want to go. Yeah, so what I want to do now is I want to move the glass pane so there's a water droplet that's interesting in the center. So what I might do is use that one. And again, we are on high res mode, so I can crop and reposition. Makes it a little bit easier to do to do this when you do that. Okay. Now, because my glass plane has been lifted, I'm focusing closer to the water drops, which means I've lost light because we're magnified in more. So what I need to do is open up my shutter speed to compensate for that. And then we're going to take another picture. Now, for me, I think somewhere in between 1 and 2 cans, so like 1.5 cans height would be probably the best. Let's have a look at another picture here. This is of Venom. And again, we're going to punch in. I'm just going to take the picture. It's like an abstracty type of shot, that is. Look what the Earth looks like at this one. Yeah, that's interesting. Let's take a shot. And can you see the theme that's going on throughout this entire shoot of let's try something, that looks interesting, let's take a shot. And that's what I want you to do. I want you to go away now, get the simple setup that I've just shown you, and experiment. And I can't emphasize that more. Experiment, because you never know what you're going to get. So when you go and do this project, I want you to be creative, be experimental. If I haven't shown something, that doesn't mean it can't be done. Give it a go, because if it doesn't work, it doesn't matter. Try different liquids. You could try glycerin in your water. You could try tap water, boiled water. Sometimes it's different. You never know. Go away and experiment, but more importantly, have fun. What I want you to do next is I want you to upload the pictures to Instagram and tag me on Instagram so I can have a look. Use the tag @StewartWoodArt so I can see your images that you've done this week. But that's where I'm going to leave this video. I want to wish you a very happy new year, and I will see you on next week's project.